So emotional labor, let's start with emotional labor. This is the first one, right? Because I think this is an important one, because I think this is where as men, we struggle, right? And the reason we struggle with emotional labor is because we're not emotional, right? We're not emotional. We're not trained in being emotional. Our emotionality is often trained out of us. So we lack in emotional capacity. I know that's not all men, but it does make a difference, right? So what is emotional labor? It is the hidden labor that's constantly upheld by someone in a relationship, right? And it can be either partner. Sometimes men do this, more often women do it, right? The studies show that women pull more emotional labor in a relationship than men. This is something that's research backed. So you may be one of the other people who, you're a man, you're doing all this labor. So it can be things like tracking the emotional state of the relationship. Like, how are we feeling? Are we connected? Are we disconnected? Right? Are we together? Are we not together? Right? It can be anticipating conflict. Like, oh, is things feeling a bit frosty? Is something going wrong? Do we need to do something about this? It can also be testing out, not feeling into, like, are we feeling strained? Do we need to do some connection things? Do we need to do things to bring us together? Right? That's something that's part of emotional labor. It can be regulating nervous systems, right? Regulating our own feelings, regulating our partners. What's it called? The word I'm looking for is, we could be us instigating co-regulation. Yeah. When one partner or both of you have, you've become a bit dysregulated, you've been a bit frustrated, you've been a bit disconnected, the person who brings you back together, right? These are all labors, right? And I'm going to keep going because there's some more examples. Holding space for one partner's feelings and emotions. For example, I speak to a lot of men who, they don't have capacity to process and understand their feelings and emotions. And they've used their partner as someone who's done that. Their partner is wanting to do that because it's a way that partner can feel them more deeply, right? But this is also a labor, because you have to sit and you have to listen and you have to dissect and you have to pull things apart. Now, I also speak to men who more likely to be friends of mine than anything else, and colleagues, where they do this labor. And it's interesting, I find, when a man starts to gain in his emotional capacity and he has a great emotional capacity and he's emotionally in tune, the women he meets are so joyful they can be of a man who can actually hold space for them, that they pour into him, and that sometimes it can be a lot for a man over time. Yeah. Emotional labor can also be remembering emotional details like anniversaries. It can even be things like birthdays and stuff like that, because there's a constant. Why is it an emotional labor? Because it's having to feel outwards. Yeah, it's like an awareness piece. I'm like feeling outwards, like, from me, what's going on around us? What's going on around us? What's going on around us? What's occurring for us? Right? And it creates a lot of work. It's like a sonar constantly having to be on, right? It's a labor that has to be done. So this comes from a bunch of work, the Gottmans researched into this and so forth, right? But ultimately, what often happens is one partner is constantly scanning and having to work on the emotional container of the relationship. And when the burden lies on one person, this can erode away at sexual desire, safety, respect, even feeling, appreciated as well. Yeah. And this is the thing, a lot of us men, what we think to ourselves is like, oh, emotional labor, well, I don't create any drama, so that means I'm not creating any labor. It's like, actually, the lack of drama you create could be actually creating disconnection, which actually becomes emotional labor. Your emotional absence can create an emotional labor for your partner, right? And your lack of ability to, say, co-regulate, or your lack of ability to notice what's going on in the relationship beyond your own experience, also creates an emotional labor for your partner, right? So this is something to do. So, simple ways you can start to tackle this are, start to listen to your partner better. Ask more questions about how they're feeling. How's your day? How are you feeling about that thing, right? Take over the management of certain items, right? Like, I don't know, birthdays and anniversaries. Put them in your diary so you get a notification 2 weeks before it happens. Oh, it's my grandma's anniversary. Oh, sorry, birthday. I'm going to take care of it, right? You're taking over these emotional pieces, right? You start to learn how to co-regulate, bring yourselves back together. Like, oh, actually, notice when your partner's off and you be curious and you ask, and actually you do something like, hey, you feel a little bit off today. How are you? Did something happen at work? Are you, is something going on with you, right? That's what you can start to learn to do, and it'll be deeply appreciated. And this is something I'm going to say multiple times through this episode, is be appreciative for this labor in your partner, right? Because you're going to start to listen and go, actually, shit, my partner does this all the time, right? So simply being like, when she does buy the birthday gifts for your auntie, you're like, hey, I really appreciate the way that you always take care of these birthday gifts for people, and like, you're so thoughtful with it, and you know, blah blah blah. Like, you actually be grateful and go to depth of the gratitude and what you're noticing, what they've done, right? So that at least if they are doing the labor, there's an appreciation for it. And then you can add in like, hey, would you like me to take over some of this? Or you can just be straight, I'm going to take over some of this because I feel like this is a lot for you to handle with everything else that you're doing. Boom. You honestly, you'll go a really long way when you start to do these things. Okay. Mental labor. This is often very closely aligned to emotional labor, a mental, cognitive, right? And this is often about like remembering stuff, right? So this is remembering what needs doing. This can be around the house, can be around the car. So like paying attention to MOTs if you're in the UK. I don't know what you do in the States. It could be paying attention to, you could even argue that to some degree, cognitive labor is like paying attention to how much fuel and petrol's in the car, right? Is you're putting your mind to something, like thinking about these things. Yeah. About, you know, maybe the contract's up on your lease in your house soon, or the, you notice that certain rooms need decorating, or, you know, whatever it is, but this what needs doing, keeping this running list of what needs doing in the house, in our lives, if you've got children, in their lives, which could add a huge amount of this cognitive and emotional labor when you have children. Trust me, I know it's happened to me, of having to manage a child, and like when they need to go to nursery and they need to go to doctors, and like when they need to go to the dentist, like all these things, it's a load to carry, right? Just planning, scheduling, coordinating life logistics, you know, moving children from place to place, like knowing what kid needs to be where for what practice, right? Because this is taking over this ownership instead of waiting to be told, right? Because waiting to be told still puts the mental labor on your partner, right? As well as anticipating future needs and problems. Yeah, that's something that's going to be really important. It's like, oh, I see that in 6 months' time, this thing could be an issue. Yeah. And maybe it's a case of going, oh, I noticed in 6 months' time, this is going to be an issue. What I think we should do about it is this, and this. That's alleviating the load because you're clearly taking on responsibility for it. Yeah. And like I said, childcare, social commitments, it can even be to some degree mental load is like planning, like social stuff. Like, oh, if you're going to have people over for dinner, like what we're going to eat, what time do people need to get there? Like when do we need to tidy up the house? Like all these sorts of things, right? These are the loads that our partners often carry. And by acknowledging them or taking on some of these things actively, it can make a huge difference to our partners, right? Really important, because it just comes down to this a lot.